Now, you've seen the title and the thumbnail, but don't get me wrong, I've lived in Kansas City my whole life. It checks off a lot of my boxes, and I don't foresee myself moving away from Kansas City anytime soon. But you almost certainly have a different set of values and priorities that you're looking for, and you want to make sure that Kansas City is the right place for you. In this video, where we're going to break down the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of the things that people cannot stand about living in Kansas City. I want to preface this by saying there's only one place on the internet that you can find the raw, unfiltered, basically anonymous opinion of a lot of different people. One, yeah, you could look at reviews of websites like niche.com, what people had to say based on the area, but there's one that's even better. It's basically a tell-all, is reddit.com. What I've done is I've gone through all of the Reddit threads, the pros and cons of living in Kansas City, the worst parts about living here, and the reasons that so many people have decided to move away from Kansas City. I've categorized them, and we're going to go through every single one. Number one, through and through. We're going to get this one out of the way. It's timely. Kansas City is a sports-centric town, but we're going to break down exactly what that means. So obviously we've got the Chiefs. They're like the crown jewel. Everybody loves the Chiefs. Red Friday is a big thing around here. Even after we won the Super Bowl, that whole week where the parade happened, we had people wearing Chiefs jerseys every single day. Basically nobody went to work, but it's not just about the Chiefs. There are several other sports teams here in Kansas City, like the Royals, who are moving their stadium downtown within the next decade. We've got KC Sporting, who's in the Legends, which is in Kansas City, Kansas. We've got the KC Current, who's currently building a stadium downtown. That's the Women's Soccer League. We've got several semi-professional sports teams. KU basketball, even KU football is a really big deal around here. Here's a comment that I think sums it up pretty well. It says, Kansas City is a place where everything revolves around eating, drinking, and watching sports with friendly people. Now, let me explain a little bit. Yes, this happens. Yes, this is very widespread, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not somebody who's going to go out and drink all weekend long and just watch sports. That's not my hobby. Nothing against anybody who does that, just different value perspectives, different ways that we like to enjoy our time. I'm pretty introverted. I'd rather stay home reading, learning, researching, helping my clients, making these videos than going out and being so, because it just drains my energy. But that's just who I am. So before you get super worried, I'm not a huge sports fan, I don't know if I'm going to fit in Kansas City, don't worry. There are several other interests and hobbies that you can develop a passion for and a social network around in Kansas City, and we'll cover some of those in this video. Here's another comment I found that was pretty funny. Being a KU or Chiefs fan is not a replacement for a personality. And of course, you can see the little comments that came afterwards. Now, one thing you might be worried about is like, if I am a sports fan, are the fans going to be like rude and total jerks to me? No. In fact, here's a comment that I think sums it up very, very well. As someone who moved to Kansas City, this is not a problem. Kansas City has probably the best fan base in the country, passionate without being total jerks about it. Number two, this is a big complaint. It's a deal breaker for a lot of people. Public transportation, and the flip side is you need a car, because we don't have any public transportation for the most part. I mean, we've got some buses. There's a streetcar in Kansas City, Missouri that will eventually connect downtown Kansas City to Brookside. It's still being developed, several years in the works. But if you're moving to any of the other Kansas City suburbs and you don't plan on living in Kansas City, Missouri, you need a car. The streetcar is no substitute for that. It can help, but it's not a replacement. So here's a comment that I think sums it up pretty well. Kansas City has horrible public transit. If you do move here, you need a car. It's so spread out. It's the most efficient and economical way of getting around town. And I largely agree. Now, the flip side of this is that once you do have a car, getting around, you're looking at about 30 minutes to most places around Kansas City. And this isn't like crazy traffic. You will hear complaints about traffic, but it's from people who are not coming from bigger cities. So if that's you and you're coming from an LA or a Dallas where traffic is just a constant headache and a battle in your daily life, you'll probably be pretty happy to find out that it's really not that bad. Of course, rush hour, it can get backed up, and the highways can be in the loop downtown, can be kind of rough, but any other time of the day, it's most likely going to be pretty smooth sailing with some minor hiccups on the way. Now, if you don't have a car, I buy based on value. I hate paying sticker price for things. So buying a new car for me is not something that I like to do, right? Because you drive it off the lot, it loses all of its value. You've heard that before. I think something that makes a lot of sense is person-to-person purchases, like buying from an individual or purchasing from a rental car company. It's going to be a newer model. It'll have less miles on it, but you'll get it at a lower price just because so many people have used it. But if you can get over that, I think that's an excellent solution. Buying a car that a rental car company company like Budget Car Sales, Avis Car Sales, etc., is actually trying to sell. Grouping all of the transportation stuff together, number 3 are the roads in Kansas City, Missouri. There are a lot of potholes. Here's a picture that I got a good laugh at. It says speed limits will be enforced by potholes. I saw a bunch of other comments about the Kansas City Police Department, which is a whole different discussion, but we may touch on it in this video, probably not. You can read about it, but there are so many threads. A lot of people are really opinionated about the roads downtown Kansas City, and you'll see a lot of potholes. It's not like they're everywhere. It's not like they're on every street, but it is a problem that you'll run into. And if you're used to the Kansas side, in Johnson County, where the roads are kept up pretty well, this is going to be a sore spot, a complaint that you're most likely going to have. But again, if you're coming from outside of Kansas City, you're going to have a whole different perspective based on the city that you're coming from or the cities that you've lived in before. Here's a review that explains that, I think, pretty well. Having lived in other cities and dealing with their nonsense traffic, I'll take Kansas City's trash hole, pothole-ridden roads. Yep, it's a problem. You read about it online, do a quick Google search, you'll see the same thing in several different forums across the internet. Now that we're done with transportation, we're going to group all of the environmental, weather-related ones all kind of together, but we'll still break them down one by one. So number 4 is the weather. In Kansas City, we've got all 4 seasons, but there are 2 complaints, and that's that there's severe humidity. It gets really hot in the summer. It gets very cold, and it's just, you don't want to be outside in the winter. And then the other complaint is the volatility in our weather. I mean, there were several times this year when that cold front came across the United States where it was like negative 10 degrees out. The next week, it was like 60 degrees outside. And people are wondering, like, what in the world is happening here? Well, that's kind of what it's like being in Kansas City. The 2 flip sides of this are that the spring and the fall are really nice. And it's not something that's comparable to many of the states that are surrounding Kansas City. They're just almost perfect. And when we talk about utility bills, yeah, you're going to be running the heater in the winter. You're also going to be running the AC in the summer, but spring and fall, those are really good times. The windows are open, lots of people have the AC off, and you are most likely going to save some money during those months. Now, here are 2 comments that were pretty good. Here's the first one. When any of my friends potentially mention moving here, I always tell them you got to be okay being inside for half of the year. Between 90-degree days, freezing cold, rainy, snowy days, you have about half the year where it's tolerable. Now on this one, this is kind of fair, but look, there are a lot of people who are going to spend a lot of time outside, and I don't want you to think that you have to be inside for half the year if you live in Kansas City. It's all based on your threshold. You may very well be moving from a really hot, a very humid area, and this is like nothing compared to you, or you might be moving from somewhere that's so cold, and this is a walk in the park for you. And this all comes down to your perspective, where you're moving from. I don't think that this is a big deal. I think, yes, there are days where you're going to want to be inside, both in the summer and the winter. There's a lot of volatility, but for the most part, the weather is, can I say, fairly reasonable. The weather is acceptable. We'll go with acceptable. Here's the second comment. Bad weather. KC natives seem to enjoy the random 80-degree days in winter, but those warm days are often flanked by 50-degree temperature changes. Agree. Yes. That is true. There's a lot of volatility. It's going to keep you on your toes. You need to have your full wardrobe accessible at any part of the year because you never know what's coming for you here in Kansas City. Number 5. This is one that I get a lot of questions about, that a lot of people are very worried about when they're moving to Kansas City. Tornadoes. Are they a big deal? No. They're not in Kansas City, at least. In other parts of Kansas, like western parts of Kansas, it can be more problematic, like if you're in Andover or Wichita or some of the smaller cities out there. But the thing about tornadoes is that very few ever touch down or do anything near Kansas City. I mean, there have been some scares. It's gotten close. The sirens have come on. The dogs are howling like a pack of wolves at the moon. But you go into your basement, and 30 to 45 minutes later, everything's fine, and you get to come up. There are a lot of people who have lived in Kansas City their whole life and never had any incident with tornadoes. It is not something that people in Kansas City are living in fear of. It's also not like other natural disasters like hurricanes or tsunamis that are super widespread, because tornadoes are really localized and oftentimes they don't even touch down. So here's a comment that I think was pretty good. Yes, most of Kansas is tornado prone, but tornadoes that do a lot of damage are not very common. They're pretty weak. Direct hit is incredibly rare. Some parts of the state that are more tornado prone, like central Kansas and the Wichita area. However, the tornado that happened in Andover is the first time there's been a major tornado in there 31 years. So there you have it. Kansas City, not a huge threat for tornadoes. There are procedures in place if you are in a newer home, even an older home. Some homes in the Kansas City area have been standing for 100 plus years. All we do, we hear the siren, we turn on the news, we go in the basement, and usually that clears everything up. Number 6, this is my kryptonite. It just kills me. During the spring and the fall, and you can probably hear it in my voice, I sound super stuffy. I've been like this for the last few days, and it is miserable. Allergies. You might have never had allergies before. You might live in a really nice climate where there's not a lot of particles, not a lot of allergens in the air. But the moment you move to Kansas City, things could all change. I have been wrecked for the last couple of days, constantly blowing my nose, itchy eyes. It is a problem, but here's the deal. It starts when everything blooms at the beginning of the spring. In this case, it happened a little bit earlier. It happened like the first sign of it, for me at least, was the end of February, first couple days in March. And then it'll kind of level out. Everything blooms. It's fine. During the summer, allergies kind of calm down. They might affect some people, but for the most part, it just kind of plateaus. And then the ragweed starts going crazy. Ragweed pollen is possibly the worst. I'm the most reactive to that, and that picks up in the fall. Again, you might have never had allergies before in your life, but coming to Kansas City could in fact change that. And this is something that is not easy. It's not just taking allergy medicine that's a simple fix. I mean, there are several people that I know, me included, they don't work. The nose stuff that you can inhale can work sometimes. The pills, toss them away. They really don't do much, at least for me. And I know several other people where that's the case too. So here's a comment that kind of echoes what I just said. Allergies, seasonal allergies leave you feeling as if you've been punched in the face during the spring and fall. Yeah, and they're right. It can extend sometimes into the summer and the winter, but over the last few years, it seems like at least me and people that I know and talk to have been hit hard early on and at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall. Now, even though I feel a lot of pressure in my face, allergies have just been killing me these last few days, I couldn't get out of filming this video. The show must go on. Leave a like if you appreciate it. Subscribe so you see more videos like this. Move on to number 7, just home prices in Kansas City. Lots of comments from people local in Kansas City who are saying home prices have just taken off like a rocket ship these past couple of years. You might be thinking, no wonder. I mean, inflation was super high. Any asset's going to go up in value. Interest rates were super low. Everybody's buying homes. Well, the other thing is that a lot of people have been moving here to Kansas City. And here's a comment that explains it pretty simply. Housing in KC is a lot cheaper than Southern California. That is starting to quickly change. The price of homes and rentals is quickly rising due to the population influx over the last 10 years. Now, one caveat here. We are nowhere close to Southern California's home prices. That's not what this person is trying to say. At least I don't think they're trying to say that. They're just saying that the price of housing here has gone up, right? It's not as affordable as it used to be, but I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Far more affordable here than LA. In fact, I've had the opportunity to work with several people from Los Angeles, from people in many different states and cities throughout the country, Oregon, Colorado, Texas, Washington, even all over the country. And for the most part, the common thread between everybody, and probably you watching this video, is your money is going to go so much farther, both in housing and cost of living here in Kansas City. And yes, to us who are locals, we've seen the price increases, and we would have been paying 25% less just 3 years ago for the same exact product, and that's hard to see, but we got to keep moving forward. It's hard to kind of dwell in the past, and if you are moving from a more expensive city, you are going to enjoy the luxury sometimes making a very sizable down payment, or even just buying your home outright in cash because of how much farther your money goes, because the equity you've already got in your home in that city you're coming from. Now, when it comes to housing prices in Kansas City, we're kind of all over the map. You can find some homes for $50,000. Are they going to be in the best suburb, in the best area, the best schools? Absolutely not. In fact, if you're looking for something like that, it's just a starter home, basic finishes, probably anywhere from 50 to 100 years old, you're looking around $250,000 to $300,000 in some of those suburbs that are highly rated. Now, of course, I've had people reach out and inquire about homes priced anywhere from the upper 400s and all the way up to $1 million. You've got a very wide variety of homes to choose from, whether it's a project that you'd like to remodel in a historic part of Kansas City, or brand new construction in Lee Summit, Blue Springs, Overland Park, Olathe, Lenexa, etc. Those are all things that can be done. And if you're not quite sure where to start, you like a little bit more insight, I'd love to work with you. Let's see if we'd be a good fit. All my contact info is below. Give me a call, text, or email. I'll get back to you quickly. I'll pull up the map. We'll answer a lot of your questions right off the bat so you have a much better idea of what we want to look at moving forward. What area would be the best fit for you? What new home community offers the amenities, the features, the price point that you are looking for? Now, number 8, this is one that a lot of people just had an issue with, and this was a deal breaker for a lot of people, which is having a weekend getaway destination. So here's the comment. I really disliked how isolated Kansas City is in proximity to other cities and areas for a day or weekend trip. I think this is where the East Coast becomes extremely desirable. Well, here's the deal. Colorado, 8 hours away. If you want to go to Lake of the Ozarks, you're about 4 hours away. If you want to go to Dallas, you're about 8 hours away. If you want to go to Chicago, similar distance away. There are not a ton of places that you can go in close proximity that are quick to travel to in Kansas City, if you're looking for a huge change in scenery, that is. But there's one caveat, and the new terminal at KCI makes this a lot better, which is you're pretty comparable at equal distances to a lot of other places that you would want to have an extended trip to throughout the country, right? Well, weekend getaways can be tough if you don't want to just go to the lake, which we'll discuss in a second. You do have quick access and shorter times to go to one coast versus the other coast, right? So that has a hidden advantage that might appeal to a lot of people, but I get the point. If you're wanting a weekend getaway and you're not a huge fan of lake life, then this probably isn't the area for you. Now, here in Kansas City, a lot of people during the summer will go to the lake. That is like the thing to do, is go into the lake. Some people even own homes in lake towns where they'll stay at during the summer, or they'll go out there every single weekend. It's a large part of the culture here in Kansas City. If you're not a huge lake person, that might not be a reason why it's make or break, but if you absolutely need a weekend getaway, Kansas City, probably not the best place for you. By the way, if you're interested in living or buying a home in one of the best lake towns around the Kansas City metro, covered 4 of them all in this video, but they do happen to be some of the most expensive places you could live in Kansas City. Now, we're moving on. This next one is pretty similar. Number 9, it's not the weekend getaways like number 8, but it is the scenery. No beaches, no mountains. Here's a comment that kind of explains it. Basically, they're saying they miss the mountains, beaches, oceans, and diversity and scenery. There's no place to go to explore it. Well, that's a very fair criticism, and I get it. If that's a make or break, you've grown up around the mountains, you've grown up around the beach, and that's a part of your culture and what you like to do, part of your passions and values, absolutely understand. Kansas City, whole different deal, right? We kind of touched on this with you can easily fly out there. Well, I know that's not going to cut it for a lot of people. In Kansas City, there are a lot of outdoors things that you can do. So many of them. I've covered a lot of them on this channel. I'll link a couple of videos right here based on the different suburbs and the things you can do in them. But here's the deal. We've got a lot of flat land. We've got a lot of trails, a lot of lakes. So very Midwestern type of scenery as compared to coastal scenery that you might be used to if you're moving from one of those locations. Number 10, we're going to group 2 of these together. I think they're part and parcel of the same kind of problem or challenge, which is moving to a new area. How easy is it to find people to date or to be friends with and build a community around you with? So here are a couple comments that'll give you a better idea of the challenges other people have had. Move from New England to Kansas City, if I'm being honest, not the easiest city to make friends in. It's not an area where there are tons of new people. Even most of Kansas City feels like living in a suburb instead of a big city, but River Market and Westport, probably your best bets. Now, the next person echoed pretty much the same thing. Moved here from New York 3 years ago. Struggled to connect with people who I shared similar interests with, and tens of people who would say, let's hang, and then we would exchange info for nothing. So let's break this down. Obviously, somebody's going to be in the comments and disagree with this because, well, how hard did they try? Are they super social? Where are they trying to meet things? But at the end of the day, going to be a little bit more of a challenge. What they said about the suburbs, kind of fair. A lot. There can be cliques and can be bubbles based on different suburbs around Kansas City, but that's not true of the entirety of Kansas City. It's hard to make just a blanket statement here. Another important distinction I want to draw is that people here in Kansas City are pretty friendly. They're not just going to hang out with you because they have something to gain. Yes, there will be people like that, but it's much less than you'd see on some of the coastal cities, at least based on what I hear. Now, another thing is just philosophically, I kind of disagree a little bit because I think whatever interest or hobby that you have, whether it's going to the gym, maybe you're super into CrossFit, you go and take some group fitness classes, or maybe you're super into the farmer's market and you want to go every weekend and you start to see similar faces and slowly you start to build connections with people. Whatever it is, if you're an art person, maybe it's getting into all of the local museums, all of the places where people are doing art around Kansas City. It doesn't matter. Whatever the shared interest is, I truly believe if you follow that interest and that passion, you're inevitably going to find people and attract people who have similar interests to you. So of course there's some variability in like, are these people looking to meet new people in the right places? But at the same time, I don't want you to be worried that people in Kansas City are just like never going to be friends with you, because that's not the case. There are a lot of people in Kansas City who are in similar situations to you, especially because, a couple of these other points we've talked about how more and more people have been moving to Kansas City. Now, on the dating front, here's a comment that explains that a little bit more specifically. It says, tough to date here after 25. Everyone here ready to get married, buy a house, and start spitting out kids. Been tough making friends. Done the meetups and social events, and I found that most people who have moved here out of the state were more willing to be friends. My experience with the locals is that they've had their friend group since high school or earlier, and everyone else is an outsider. This is all based on a difference of perspective. So based on everything that I said before, I think that kind of applies here. Find the passion, the hobby, and the people around Kansas City that share those passions and hobbies. And I think the rest of it comes. Enough. I need you down. I know. You just want someone to say, So that was my dog, Oscar. Usually, when I'm filming these videos, he's sitting right next to me and he's usually quiet and very tired, but sometimes he gets really excited, needs a really big hug. So that's what that was. Interesting timing. Of course, if something happens and you just can't find friends in Kansas City, it's hard to feel lonely with a dog like that around you. Now, we're going to move on to the politics. The last three are basically politics. We're going to cover crime, living state line, which side of Kansas City to live on, and then we'll finally end with taxes, right? The most fun thing that you're certainly looking forward to. So let's get started with number 11, which is crime. Now, crime is something that a lot of people are worried about. I mean, I've even gotten emails just for making these videos, parents who are watching them, whose kids are moving here, and they're just worried because of what they've heard and seen in the news regarding crime in Kansas City. I'm here to tell you, here's this comment first. It says, despite having a high crime number, I've never felt unsafe in Kansas City. Even lower income, sketchier parts of town, never felt like I was going to be jumped or robbed or was in any type of danger. I didn't get rotten looks or be told to leave or asked why I was there. And then at the end of it, it says, hasn't happened to me yet in Kansas City. Feel like Kansas City has a don't start none and there won't be none attitude, which is how it should be. Now, I get it. The crime in Kansas City is kind of concentrated. Downtown Kansas, more urban parts of Kansas City is typically where crime anywhere it happens to be. And that is true of Kansas City to some point. There are little pocketed instances of crime. Two things that you could do about it. One is you can go on niche.com and you can read the reviews based on the city, area, neighborhood of what other people think living in that area based on do they feel safe or the school is good? What do they think of the neighbors in that area? That's something that you could do. Another thing that you can do, go ahead, go down to the description, give me a phone call. I'm usually able to answer a lot of the questions that you might have. I'll pull up the map, we'll hop on a Zoom call so you can get a better idea of what would match your preferences a little bit better. Now, I'm not allowed to steer you one way or another based on crime, but based on what you're looking for, I can give you a little bit more insight as to where you would find that. Now, as to my own opinion, I've never felt like super unsafe. Granted, I spent a lot of time in the suburbs and in Johnson County, which I might get blasted for in the comments, but it is what it is. I'm not going to lie to you. So I don't feel super unsafe. Even going downtown, I don't feel super unsafe. There are some parts that you want to stay away from, but again, any of those websites, you can read reviews and you can get a much better idea than I'm legally allowed to give you. Now, number 12 is state line. The age-old debate, Kansas versus Missouri. Kansas City, Missouri falls on the Missouri side, but everything is split because the whole metro area spans two different states. So you'll find very heated opinions, which most likely boil down to people who are anti-suburbs and pro-suburbs. Obviously, this channel, we cover a lot of suburb stuff, so you already know where I fall in this. I'm not going to say anything bad. It's just a different value perspective, a different way of life that I'm looking for, that a lot of my clients happen to be looking for than some people who might be anti-suburbs. So here's the comment. It says, the thing I hate about Kansas City the most, being stuck between two states that don't have Kansas City's best interests at mind. People here very sensitive to state line, never understand why. People here also tend to be fanatical about Kansas City, unwilling to hear any criticism, especially ones about segregation, crime, education. keep your talking points to the Chiefs, Royals, Jayhawks, and your goal. That's some solid advice, right? So one thing that brings a lot of people together. But here's the deal. Is it a big deal if you live in Kansas? Are people in Missouri going to hate you? No, it's not that big of a deal. People will be opinionated about that, but I don't think it's something that they're going to like hold against you and just like forbid you from being around them, their friends. It's not that situation. It is just like a little politically controversial. People will give digs back and forth. Like people in Kansas will say that people in Missouri drive terribly. People in Missouri might say that, oh, Johnson County, the bubble, everybody's stuck up. It's not true. Stereotypes, they're not true of every part of the Kansas City metro. By the way, I'm sure I missed something. If I did, leave a comment below so other people can see it, and hit that like button so that other people can see this video and they can add their input, and then this becomes a resource for anybody who's moving to Kansas City. If you're local to Kansas City, this would help them out quite a bit. So go ahead and do that for me. I would appreciate it a lot. If you like this channel, like this video, hit that subscribe button so you're the first to see new videos about living in Kansas City real estate, and new homes in Kansas City. Number 13, we've got taxes. There are two parts to this. Number one is living and working in the same state. Here's a comment. It says, both sides usually something obscene, but the real headache was having to live in one state while working in the other. If you do, plan to reside on whichever side you'll be working in. I think that is solid advice. Otherwise, you're going to have to file taxes in both of the states, possibly pay state taxes in both of those states, maybe not get a full refund. It's a little complicated. I might have gotten some of that a little bit wrong, but the general idea is true. You most likely want to live and work in the same state. Now, there's a caveat. There's a second part of this that you need to know about. If you're planning on living in Kansas City, Missouri, you got to kiss another 1% of your income. Kiss it goodbye, because you're not going to see it, especially if you're living in one of the suburban parts of Kansas City, Missouri, because they're really not going to spend that money on you. That money is going to go to basically fund downtown so the city can make more tax revenue. That's kind of contentious. That's my opinion based on what I've read and how I think living in Kansas City. So people can kind of go back and forth, but you're going to spend an additional 1% towards taxes just because you live in Kansas City, Missouri. For a lot of people, it is well worth it, and I completely get it. They've got different values. For me, that's ringing the alarm bell. Why waste another 1% of my income there if I could just live in a different part of Missouri or go over to the Kansas side? So that's where I'm at, but it's really up to you and the value that you find in Kansas City, Missouri versus some of the other parts of the Kansas City metro area. Hopefully this video gave you a good idea of the pros and cons of living in Kansas City. If you're still a little iffy on some of this stuff, I'd love to talk with you about it, especially if you're moving here and you're wondering, like, where's the best area to buy a home? What's the best type of home to buy? Should I buy new, used? What's a good builder? What's a good floor plan? I'd love to help. All my contact info is in the description. Give me a call, text, email. I'm responsive. I do a lot of research. Most likely the first time we talk, I'll be able to answer a lot of your questions. If I just don't have the expertise that you need and there's somebody better, I'll let you know. I'm going to refer you to whoever is going to be best for you, because that's the only thing that matters at the end of the day. So if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe so you're the first to see future videos. By the way, I know there are some touchy subjects in this video. I'm not trying to insult anybody. I'm not trying to attack anybody else's opinion. Everybody has a different value and perspective and different priorities in life. So I think as much disagreement, as much controversy that might happen in the comments below after I post this is absolutely welcome. I think it'll help people get a better picture of what living in Kansas City is like. If I'm wrong about something, let me know. If there's something I missed, let me know in the comments so that I can change it and make sure that anybody who watches this is aware of that. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you on the next one.